are so excited to have Ann and Jane Esselstyn with us today because they're going to talk with us about their new cookbook. And, I want to be sure. There we go. Can you
Be a plant-based woman warrior? Live fierce, stay bold, eat delicious. Woohoo!
Jane, why don't you share with us what is your intent of writing this cookbook together? What was your purpose?
Thank you for asking, because we did have three big purposes behind writing this book. Be a plant-based woman warrior, live fierce, stay bold, eat delicious. And the first one, obviously, is this book is a tip of the hat to my mom, because this whole food plant-based movement came into our lives as a theory in the 80s. And my mom picked up this mantle of eating whole food plant-based before we even had that nomenclature. And she did so with a full-time job and 4 kids who were all athletes at home and had to, eat all the time. And my dad worked full-time, and it was his theory. And we had a dog and a cat. And she somehow made this happen. She gave this movement legs, and she did it without complaint, but just her usual, well, let's just try it. and there was no internet. There was no,
back then there was no internet. There were really no cookbooks, and we lived in Cleveland. And, I was teaching school. I was teaching 6th grade English, and believe it or not, 2 of the words that I gave my 6th graders, one was vegetarian and one was vegan. And, they'd never heard, they didn't know what they meant. And so that was sort of the world that we entered. There was on the West Coast, McDougal, but the West Coast was far away then. And so we just had to figure it out.
And she did. So that's why I've said this is a tip of the hat to her, because my mom's my next door neighbor, and she's my daily dose of hell yeah, I want to live like her, fiercely out there running, dragging a tire behind herself. I'm sure you've seen her do that on our YouTube or our Instagram. And
I actually went today to think of dragging a tire, but the tire was filled with water.
It doesn't even get you wet.
I didn't feel like, and it was wet enough outside that
it's been raining here.
Getting more wet.
So but I really want to be able to be just like my mom. So it was really a tip of the hat to her. But also another reason is that this is a message just for women, because the majority of women in this world are the ones who do the mental labor of thinking about, what are we going to eat? What are we going to grow? What are we going to buy at the store? What am I going to prep? What am I going to buy? What am I going to prepare? What am I going to serve? That's so much that goes into our minds that it doesn't go into other people's minds. So it's two-sided, because in that same sort of effort of love and providing and growing and preparing food for people, we have introduced all this Western illness, this lifestyle related disease. That is now, it's everywhere in our country. And we also then can be fierce and be bold, like Ann, and stick with this, let's just give this a go. Be bold, try this, go with this, and step by step, meal by meal, bite by bite, we can maybe turn ourselves into a healthier direction and not towards all this lifestyle related disease and stuff. And the third reason I wrote this book is that women truly are, and the men as well. I mean, men prepare plenty of food. Men have changed their.
It's totally for men too.
Yeah, it's for anybody. But I'm saying, as a part of our culture that's treated in kind of like a minority, just as women tend to be, not have their voices heard and research done and appreciated as much. Definitely want to have them be bold about what they serve and what they do, because it's such a powerful message. But also, we are unique in that we women have this burden of our physical selves being something that is viewed and judged. And it's tightly connected to food and what we eat and how we see ourselves and how we identify. And I know I myself was a college athlete growing up, and I have 3 brothers. I'm surrounded by brothers. I'm in a brother soup. And just all of us swam we're talented enough swimming wise, supported by our parents, that we all swam like at a national level. I was in Olympic trials when I was 14. It was like, this is what we do. This is what we're all wired to do. We didn't have like a cheerleader, a druggie, a computer whiz, and a jock. We had 4 nationally ranked swimmers. I don't know how they did that, but that's what they got. And so we're all swimming. And I'm swimming at my University of Michigan, and my brothers are all their universities, one actually in high school. And I'm about 18 years old. And I'm training for NCAAs. And it's, here we go. This is what we do. We compete. We're talented athletes. My body was not really feeling like, I'm like, what's going on? My clothes aren't fitting like they used to. And I don't like what's my shape, and that this is just, I'm just uncomfortable in my own skin. But I got to eat, and I got to train, and I got to show up, and I got to perform. And I was getting so crazy because my brothers hadn't thought for one iota, not 1 second of 1 minute have they thought about what food they eat and how it affects their body and how it affects how they identify with their bodies and themselves and how they feel and who they are. And I just didn't know what to do about it. Like, was I not going to eat and then not be able to train, not to perform? Like, no. I didn't know what to do. And then all of a sudden the phone rang and my parents called from Cleveland saying they were eating this no meat, no dairy, no added oil, minimal salt, blah, 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 all this. What? But it somehow made sense. And slowly this feeling of like, what's happening in my body kind of, it didn't happen it take a while, but this is where things have landed. And I have been the same size now since, sort of in a comfortable zone and not having to put any mental energy or any sort of food head about, what to eat. So it's a wonderful unburdening, I think, to be a plant-based woman warrior. And I just can't imagine what my life would have been like, what my worries and my concerns and my body and my mind and the connection of who I am. It would have been a mess. So I'm so thankful.
Jane, that was one of my questions that you just went right on and answered, because that section on finding food freedom, that was what you just described. And, of course, men have problems with food too, as young kids, especially probably more now. But that problem that we've had as women and young girls, spending so much time thinking about food in a negative way, is addressed with plant-based eating. And you're right, your brothers didn't have to worry about that at all. And so you took care of that virus for us by making it easy with this cookbook. So thanks for going right into that, because that's what makes this cookbook more than a cookbook. The first section has some excellent content that speaks to some issues that we can identify, whether we're women or men, but also whether we're transitioning from eating meat to plants. There's some good tips. Like, here's a good one that I really liked. And I've heard you talk about this, Anne, a lot. When people started back when you and Dr. Esselstyn and your family moved to plant-based, there were no processed foods to speak of, or maybe they were just coming. But now you've talked to us about how ultra-processed is a problem, even for plant-based eaters. Tell us about that, Anne.
It's a mind trap. I know my husband is always saying that he's seeing people now for heart disease who are vegan because they're vegan junk food people. I mean, it's so tempting to go into Whole Foods or somewhere and see all the cupcakes that are vegan, and to see the vegan muffins, and to see the vegan
sausage.
And there is
chicken nuggets
sections. There are sections that say plant-based meats, and you look at the ingredients and it's oil and oil. I mean, there's 3 kinds of oil because they don't want to put one oil because it would be the first ingredient. So it is shocking. I think the most important thing that anybody can do today is, whatever you're buying, read the ingredients. Good old rice milk that we used years ago, all of the rice milks have oil, maybe as the second ingredient. Cashew milk, oil is the second ingredient.
I don't even remember you using rice milk.
Well, I did.
Oh.
And so read ingredients and stick to the whole food idea. And then you'll be in a much better place.
And this book does a good job of giving us ways that we can do that too. Well, there's one called Becoming Plant-Based Women Warriors. And that's a lot of sections. There's one here on Patricia. There's one here on Dr. Agarwal that we.
Well, Kathy, I'm sure you guys are exposed to this too. We get all sorts of stories from people who say, oh my gosh, I used to weigh 10,000 pounds and now I weigh 10. I had this disease and that disease and now I have none. I was on 20 meds, now I'm on none. So we have all these stories we hear, and we know that people aren't bothering to contact us with all these numbers and tell us these stories. They probably are true, but we wanted to choose stories for this book of people that we had known, had seen, gone through, like Joyce, for example, the woman who had lupus. We met her and she was on numerous meds and she was still struggling with this and this. And we saw her go from this to no medication and lupus. And she had never heard about, 42 years old. She never knew she had muscles. Suddenly she's like working out at these, she's like, I am posing everywhere I can. I've never had a muscle in my life. I've had lupus. I've been in the hospital. I've had my bones removed from here to there. But I'm showing off my muscles now. I'm free of lupus. So we saw this happen. So she got in the story. Same with Patricia, same with Monica, same with Sarai, same with Shar, and I mean, all the stories in there. Jordy, the fertility story. Ooh. These are all people that we have known. So we know that they represent sort of the.
And those stories can really convince people, if they'll just pay attention, that all they did was change their diet. It really works. Look at their results for all these things.
Is a sex ed teacher, and that's really her forte. I think if she could do anything, it would just be that. But she did a little piece in the book that might be of interest. Because what everybody we found, they just don't get how
plants powerfully support women is what the section's called. And if you wanted to talk about this, great. If not, you can just edit it right out. Okay.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. Let's do it. Okay. So why don't you talk with us about, what does it really mean to be a woman, and how does how do eating plants impact that? So Jane, go into it.
I have no idea what it means to be a woman, but I do know that I am a woman and identify as one. So however you identify as being one, great. And if you're biologically born as a woman, and this is what you have, I want to talk about how plants powerfully support your female anatomy below the belt. We've talked about how it helps your mind. Like you don't have this sort of mind virus about, food in your body. And obviously it is helpful with your breast health. Please interview Dr. Christy Funk. She's amazing. She's a breast cancer surgeon from California. Amazing. But we like to talk about how it benefits women below the belt. And so we're going to talk about the female anatomy, not front view, but we're going to turn her side view and talk about her from the back to the front. And that means we're talking about CUVA. So in the back, everybody has a hole. And this is a t-shirt. Yes, they're available at janeesselstyn.com, but you're not going to see why you want to have one until we get to the end. All right. So in this t-shirt, which is our graphic here, is in the back, everybody has an A. This hole back here is called an anus. And the anus, if you venture on up here, you've got so many things benefit from a plant-based diet. Your microbiome is enriched and empowers your immune system to function at its peak best. You're at very low risk of getting colon cancer with a whole food plant-based diet. The fiber is astounding. You are very low risk of being constipated. I have yet to meet a plant-based eater who's constipated, unless they're dehydrated. And it also decreases your chances of getting diverticulitis, which is the outpouching of your colon, which only comes from you having to strain really hard. And then your colon becomes little balloons that you pouch out from pushing so hard. And lastly, you are very low risk of having your hemorrhoids be swollen. If you have hemorrhoids, they'll shrivel up like raisins. But if you don't have them, you probably won't get them, because the hemorrhoids just actually pushing so hard, you push some of the veins out of your bottom. So we don't want that. Moving ahead, this is the next hole in the female's pelvic floor, which is the vagina, the vaginal space here. And if we venture on up here, we can again talk about so many ways of plant-based diet benefits of a female. Up in her reproductive system, and here, your ovaries, your uterus, your endometrial lining, they all benefit from running on your hormones that you make in your body as a female versus the estrogen found in eggs and dairy and meat. Just have your system be your system, and it'll work the way it's supposed to work and without the wackadoodleness of other input. The lining of the uterus, called the endometrium, is particularly beneficial, especially if you're still in your fertile years, because every month, as we know, we have our period, this cycle, and the endometrial lining proliferates. And sometimes it can form, usually when people are eating meat and dairy, form these fibroids that hang down like stalactites in a cave. It's just tissue. And our, caves drip with water, but our fibroids drip with blood. So women oftentimes will be like, I'm spotting, I'm bleeding through my cycles. I've got fibroids. I can't seem to control my fibroids from bleeding so much. And I'm anemic, and they're going to take out my uterus as a solution. So they're offered to become infertile versus to just try something else. Oftentimes women, when they go off meat or dairy, especially dairy and eggs, they find these fibroids disappear. And instead of being infertile and anemic, they suddenly are having babies.
And we have a story.
And our story of Jordi, Jordi, she was kind enough to share with us what happened. Her dad had a heart attack and almost died, thankfully, unthankfully, because she ate with them thereafter at a whole food plant-based diet. She thought she was infertile, and she just had gotten married. So when she was eating with them and, getting her dad better, she also was getting better without knowing it. And before she had to have a hysterectomy, she had a baby. So it's amazing what can happen there. Okay, we're chatting too much about this, but here, this space is the urethra, and above the urethra, we have a whole, urinary system, which is essential for it. I mean, these are all essential, but our urine is how we clean our blood. So, up above the uterus, up above the bladder, the ureters, which come out of the kidneys. Your kidneys love having not a lot of protein, not a lot of animal protein, and not a lot of plant protein. Your kidneys don't want to be burdened by protein. Ask any healthcare worker what burdens kidneys, and they'll say too much protein, because we can't store it in our bodies. We have to filter it out. It's just as burdensome. So a plant-based diet is not overburdened with protein, thank goodness, and it's very helpful. And our bladder this is an interesting one from Dr. Greger, Dr. Michael Greger. I'm sure you know him with nutritionfacts.org. You guys know him well. He has some great research that he has found, and he's Mr. Research guy, that chicken has in it this antibiotic resistant bacteria that if you eat it and it gets in your body and on your faucet and your cutting board and your knife and your world, it's very hard to get off of your world and out of your body. And it gets in your body, filtered through your kidneys, your bladder, your urethra, and you get these UTIs, and you really can't get rid of them. And I keep thinking, like, I've got 3 kids, and I'm going to tell them, you guys can only date vegans, because I don't want them muckling around down there with somebody else who might be infecting them with that same bacteria. Anyway, so let's get forward. This is the most exciting part here, the C. The C represents the clitoris, the clitoris, the clit, whatever you want to call it. But they thought it was only 8,000 nerves for sexual pleasure, but they just discovered last month, the research came out, it's 10,000 nerves. A penis has 4,000 nerves in it. We have 10,000 nerves right here. I want to have a 10K to celebrate the 10K we just discovered. The 10K. So there's 10K nerves wired for sexual pleasure. But here's what's so interesting, and this ties into the plant-based eating, is that yes, this is like the head of the penis, which is called the glans, the glans. And the glans clitoris is right here. And it engorges a little bit, like the head of the penis engorges a little bit when it's aroused. And the shaft of the penis has 2 sides called the corpus cavernosa. As a penis, engorges, it gets bigger and longer. Well, we have the same tissue because women and men are made of the same Legos. Men have nipples, we have nipples, okay? Different way that behaves in our bodies. Same with down here. We have the same glands, that engorges with blood. And we have the same corpus cavernosa. We have the same tissue that they have in the shaft of their penis, but ours is right here along the pelvic floor. And it branches off from the clitoris and it goes up like two bunny ears and it wraps around the vaginal space. And they're called crura, and the crura kind of balance them out. So these bunny ears wrap around this corpus cavernosa, and the more we're aroused, the more it engorges with blood, the more it wraps around this vaginal space like a hippie hugging a tree. So all this blood flow is going in right here. And we all know that blood flow is really important to get in these little crevices and these little spaces and these capillaries. But what it does is the blood flow right here in the vaginal space creates lubrication. And lubrication is a woman's sign of readiness, and erection in a man is a man's sign for readiness. Both of these processes are dependent upon blood flow and blood flow getting to where it needs to go. Lubrication in a woman's made from plasma, which comes from blood, and some female chemicals. So whole food plant-based diet benefits us top to bottom, front to back, pelvic floor, here and there and everywhere. Yay, CUVA! JaneEsselstyn.com. Get your t-shirt today. CUVA.
Fantastic. That was a wonderful description of the whole process and the reason why plant-based eating can help with that aspect of our lives as well.
We can talk about recipes if you want.
Cookbook, there's lots of good choices. One of my favorite ones is the buffalo Brussels sprouts. And the reason why I like that one is it's simple, it tastes really good, and I have the ingredients on hand.
And did you notice the title of that little bit?
That section?
A bunch of BS.
I didn't catch that.
It's called a bunch of BS, and there's the Brussels sprout section.
Gosh, I've got to read this even more carefully. That one's a great one. But I find that the recipes in here are like that. They're just not exotic, but they're unique, and they give us a new flavor to some of the traditionals that we're used to with the plant-based diet. So thank you for doing that. Now you've got to tell me about the desserts though, because the fudgy chocolate walnut frozen.
You were hilarious. Let's talk about recipes, and you go right to the desserts. But you are right in harmony with us.
This is so funny
because we got our contract. You'll understand what I'm about to say. We got our contract March 7th, 2020. So right before COVID hit, we suddenly were like, oh, we have a project to do. So, trying to go to the store, trying to shop, trying to do recipes, trying to do all this stuff.
We did the whole book over COVID.
Yeah, we did the whole thing during COVID. So finally, one day, I was like, "Hey, mommy, we've got this. Like, what do we have here? Let's see what we have." And we collected all our recipes. We had 7 breakfasts that were solid, 8 lunches that were solid, 9 dinners that were solid, and we had 44 desserts that were solid. So we knew we were making this book right on for Kathy at Chef and Chew and other women who might be interested, because there were so many good desserts.
Well, they've been a hit. And that frozen dessert is so great because you make up a batch, and when it comes to chocolate, it's so hard not to eat it all at once, but you freeze it and it's always there, you can go to it and enjoy it. So that's great.
Are you talking about the out of sight brownie or the frosted one?
The official name is Frosted Fudge Walnut Brownies.
Oh, yes. That's a great one.
That's a really good one. Yeah. And
well, it was so much fun, Kathy, because during COVID, my husband and I ended up watching TV a lot at night. And so Jane is the brownie dessert queen. And so every night I would hear our door rustle, and my mouth would begin to water, because I knew that she had another brownie sample for us to try. How many did you take?
No, it took us about 12 samples to get one of them straight, but it was great to see.
And it was wonderful every night. And they were all good.
It was this Pavlovian response. It was hilarious.
You were just like that Pavlov's dog. You would start. Yeah. That's funny. Well, that chapter on sauces is really good too. In fact, this book was a birthday gift to a friend, because she has a batch cooking day and she always makes a sauce or two. And so I gave her this book because I thought, here's some new ones. Tell us about the sauces.
What? Don't tell.
Well, it was so interesting because we handed everything into the publisher, and you can imagine you hand in all this stuff to the publisher, like here's all of our recipes printed out just, on Microsoft Word, just, documents. You have no idea how it's all going to look and work out and be organized and pretty little this and that. And then you hand them all the photos you take and you hope that they put them in the right places. Anyway, when we handed them all of our sections in, they read everything so carefully. They said, Jane and Ann, you guys talk about your sauces as your secret weapons, as things you cannot live without. These are your flavor bombs. These are your like, just, this is the key to it. And we're like, yes. She's like, so we're going to put your sauce section first. And we were like, no. And is so like adamant about breakfast being first and have it yum. Then I said, we can put the sauces section second. So it goes breakfast sauces, because everything from there on, you either use a sauce with it or dip it in a sauce, or sauce is part of the bowl or part of the sandwich, or it made a lot of sense actually when we thought about it.
Yeah. And I love the way Brian's recipe, the black ramen bowl, where you make the sauce in the bowl. I can't wait to entertain and do that, because I think that would be so much fun for people to make their little sauce and then put all the ingredients in it.
And then for them to watch you. And we have a video. Did you see his video on it?
I think I did. Yes.
It's great because you see how relaxed it is to do it. It's so soothing.
I'll put the links in the show notes. So to each one of these recipes, because they're really good. But one is not in the book, but we're still going to put a link to it. And that one has to do with the fact that your recipes and your YouTube channel are just a great source for people like many of us have turned into foodies, because we didn't want food before, it's like, no, don't do that to me. I can't eat it. It'll make me fat. But now it's like, oh, what's the new thing on Jane's channel? And the holiday, I'm going to say it right.
Holiday butter board.
Because I read about the butter boards and I was like, oh, that's horrible. That's horrible. And you have a wonderful one that's just, oh, it's so elegant. Tell us about it.
Well, you're right. Butter boards were a trend on social media.
They would spread really butter across a board. I mean, first of all,
ew.
The idea is just so disgusting.
Oh.
And then pile it high with
whatever, salami, cheese, this, and then you drip it. But a friend of ours said, Jane, have you been following this butterboard trend? I'm like, I know, but I think we could do it healthier. She's like, I know, you just had your video about, we have a hickory smokehouse hummus. And she said, I think I want to put hickory smokehouse hummus on the board and then put all kinds of stuff. I said, stop talking about it. We are filming YouTube on Monday. Come and bring your stuff. And she was like, oh, are you serious? And I was like, yes, you think we practice our stuff all the time and have it dialed in? No, we're a hot mess and we're goofing and laughing. We edit out stuff when we need to, and please come do it. So she surprised us. She put that all together herself. And the layers that we'll review now in case people don't want to bother with watching it. We have this beautiful just cutting board, hickory smokehouse hummus, and then she had shaved and cooked slightly Brussels sprouts, very thin. And then she had some caramelized shallots. We would have caramelized onions, but she did shallots. And then she had some small diced butternut squash. She used honey nut squash that she found, but butternut squash, same thing. And then on top of that, she put some dried cherries and some pomegranate seeds and
dried apricots,
chopped apricots, and then some microgreens. And then we put a balsamic glaze on top. And it was so autumnal looking, so holiday looking. It was so beautiful. And we got such an awesome response. I mean, Kathy, you're singing from the same song sheet from a lot of people. They were like, this is spectacular. And we used crackers and rice cakes and carrots, all kinds of things to just dip into this.
But you don't have to do the things she put on. You could do anything you want
within the plant-based realm.
I just want to tell you the wonderful little purple you see going by behind us is Jane's daughter, Cryle.
Yes,
Okay,
we
so
love the holiday better board, and lots of people served it during their during their holidays, and we heard wonderful things about it.
yeah,
You
well,
know, one of the
that's
things-
one I'm going to watch and use too.
Kathy, one of the things that was interesting, I think that the publishers did for the book is that I come at food and recipes from my husband's plant perfect idea of heart disease patients in mind. So I tend to be no nuts, no avocado type. I mean,
Mhm.
just a little different on that score. And so what the editors have done is
Oh.
that they, after each recipe, they will say that it's heart disease friendly or give you a way to make it heart disease friendly. Instead of these nuts, try cannellini beans, or, there's that idea. So
But it's really wonderful because for a cookbook to add text it's a big deal. So but the publisher, she was great. She said, let's indicate if this is heart disease friendly, and if not, how can it become heart disease friendly? And if we can't make it heart disease friendly,
No
we won't
comment.
even indicate anything. So if there's no comment, just steer clear heart
I
disease.
mean, there's
patients.
this most delicious, what is the nuts thing called?
Oh, like this Lucky Nuts.
Lucky nuts. Ah, I mean, they're heavenly delicious, but if you have a heart disease, don't
Yeah.
go there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But
Yeah, I like that too. I like the suggestions on what to do instead of it. Okay, for the final question, we've got Anne. So Anne, you're up. All right. So I know you didn't get to pull the tire today because it had water in it, but that's not that's not normal, because you do pull the tire, you do yoga, you do gardening, you exercise. I was in a exercise class with you years ago on the beach in Clearwater, and I kept thinking, how could she do that? You were beating me, and I was like 10 years younger. But anyway, so Chef AJ asked you this question, and I want to ask you, and I want to hear your answer this time. You've lived a long, healthful life, Anne, and you're continuing to live that way. And I want to know, is it the greens you tell us to eat, like Chef JJ asked, or is it your genes?
Oh, I don't think it has a thing to do with my genes. My genes stink, Jane. Don't you agree?
Oh no, genetics are what's so interesting is that people think that they want to be an Esselstyn. They want to, I want to be your family. You're so healthy. Well, our family tree is riddled
Shocking.
with disease. Like grandparents, my grandparents, so their parents, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, prostate cancer, lung cancer, another kind of cancer, heart disease, breast cancer. Those are just grandparents. And then aunts and uncles, 2 brain cancers, 2 pancreatic cancers, and
I have a sister that died of glioblastoma,
brain cancer,
and a brother that died of pancreatic cancer.
On both sides of our family.
They are the worst.
So we are a heart disease and cancer central. Part of, I think, why my parents are eating the way they eat is they are the only pillars standing in their family of just typical American genes.
But I think people, they say, oh, it's in the family. Well, what's in the family is that tradition
of eating habits.
of eating however you're eating.
Yeah.
Is the sad American diet. That is the tradition. I mean, certainly your genes make you prone to go in a certain way, but they're not written in stone.
Yeah.
You're in charge.
That's so exciting to know that we can make some changes.
And I mean, I would say that eating as close to plant perfect is good most of the time for most people, because no matter what, probably it's important to eat plant perfect. I mean, eat plant strong, plant perfect, but
eat plants.
And this cookbook gives us lots of ways to eat plants. So thank you both for this opportunity to learn more about the new cookbook, to learn more about you. And anything else you want to add before we sign off?
Let me say that, Kathy, I think what you have started in Florida with Chat and Chew is extraordinary, and how it has branched out to, you said, over 1,000
Subscribers.
I mean, I mean, I remember meeting you when you were just, I don't know how many, you was just maybe an idea. And look what it's done. So here you are interviewing us. I mean, that's so exciting. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy, and thanks for including us on the chat and chew.
Yes, and thank you, and y'all have a good afternoon, and we appreciate it. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you. Bye.